My name again is Curtis Harms from the last session, and I am the Director of Communication with the Nebraska Corn Board. And we're here to talk about our internship offerings for this coming summer. And we're really lucky to have in this virtual room Kim Atkins. She's the Vice President and Chief Operating Officer with the U.S. Grains Council located in Washington, D.C. And then we also have David Schuler, who is a former intern with the U.S. Grains Council, 2 years ago now?
I don't like talking about it. I think it was 3 now.
I was going to say,
years,
I think it's 3. I think we've been trying to get David to come work for us for at least 2 years. But...
yeah. I'm still. Wish I
time
could
flies,
do both.
doesn't it?
Yeah, crazy.
Yep, and so I'm going to kick it over to Kim to maybe give an introduction of the U.S. Grains Council, some of the different things that they do on a regular basis, and she's interacted with some of the interns. And I don't know if, Kim, if you wanted to talk about the international internship at all either,
yeah.
Maybe just touch on that some. I am
Sure.
recording this. If any of you have questions along the way, don't hesitate to either wait till the end, or you can also type it in the chat box too, and I'll monitor that. And then David can go ahead and give maybe a discussion of his experiences with working with the Grains Council, as well as maybe DC living and that kind of thing, logistics and that kind of thing. So thanks again for joining us, Kim. I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks. Well, good afternoon. And like Curtis said, I'm Kim Atkins. I'm the Vice President of the Grains Council. I've been on staff for about 15 years with USGC. So I guess that really dates me a little bit, but I have worked closely with all of the interns that we've had with Nebraska Corn. I can't think how many years back this has been now, maybe 6 years, I think.
But
it's been a great program. It gives us extra staff capacity during a busy time for us in the summer, and also in our overseas offices, as well as hopefully provides a really valuable learning experience and job experience for our interns. So I thought I would start off this morning or this afternoon just talking a little bit about who we are. I think that's important to kind of understand what our overall mission and focus is, and then I'll talk more specifically about what the kind of programs that we operate, and then how our interns have worked with us in the past. So the council's mission is to develop markets, enable trade, and improve lives. So our mission is entirely focused on building export markets for U.S. corn, sorghum, barley, and all related co-products, including distillers grains and ethanol. So we don't have any sort of domestic role. All of our work is really focused on building export markets, and we work really closely with our state partners and national partners who work on sort of the domestic issues. Sometimes those issues intersect when it comes to like trade agreements and those kinds of things in terms of work on Capitol Hill, and that's where we really work closely with our partners who lobby. But primarily the Grains Council we're forbidden by our bylaws to do any work on Capitol Hill. We do work closely with the administration in the United States, so with the White House, USTR, USDA, but most of our programming work and all of the work that takes place in either our DC office or in our international offices is focused on this mission statement, so building export markets. So just a quick map. This is where the council is located. We have our headquarters in Washington, D.C. It's our only office in the United States. We do have a couple of employees who work full-time in remote offices, or from their homes remotely. Right now, actually everybody, but usually most of us work in the DC office. And then we have lots of different locations around the world where we have either full-time staff, so that's kind of where you see those bubbles, the yellow bubbles, or representatives around the world. And so these people are really the kind of the eyes and ears in those markets, connecting with our global customers and government officials around the world. We do have some Americans posted around the world in those offices. We have in Mexico City, in Panama, in Malaysia, in India, well, not actually in India, but in Singapore right now, and maybe that's it. But those are places where we've posted American citizens taking fully overseeing those offices. Oh, China too. So just a little bit about who our membership is. We have 26 state checkoff boards as members of the council. So like Nebraska Corn Board is one of those checkoff members. We have one national checkoff board, which is the United Sorghum Checkoff Program, and then 25 grower associations and farm bureaus. Again, we don't do any lobbying, so we're located in Washington, D.C. We work very closely with USDA. In fact, we receive a good amount of funding through USDA for our international programs, but we rely really a lot on these relationships with our grower associations, both on the state and national level, as well as the farm bureaus, to do the policy work on our behalf. We also have 116 different agribusinesses as members of the council and 5 non-checkoff entities. I think that our membership brought kind of diverse and broad membership amongst the agribusiness sector really makes the council unique in terms of who we are and how we are able to represent U.S. agriculture in the international marketplace. I think we're one of the few cooperators that have this very big membership, all the way from farmers all the way to life science companies, grain exporters, and all the equipment companies in between. In the last 5 years, we've really expanded our membership on the ethanol side, including a lot of new ethanol plants as members and ethanol trade associations, because that's when we began our ethanol market development work around the world. So the way the council operates is really as a public-private partnership, which is also a little bit unique. So we are, our DC office is fully funded through our member funds, those members that you, oops, that slide advanced on its own. Those members that we just talked about on the previous slide. We're able to leverage the funding that we receive from our members and also their non-cash support, and apply for funds from USDA through the Market Access Program, or MAP, the Foreign Market Development Program, or FMD, and the Agriculture Trade Promotion Program, or ATP. All of those programs are funded through USDA's Foreign Agricultural Service and allow us to really implement our market development programs around the world and have that global presence that we talked about in the previous, or we saw in the map. I just wanted to quickly also show this slide, which talks about the kinds of programs that we implement. And I'm going to go through them really quickly, but I think for the purpose of the internship, it's important to understand what are the kinds of things that the council actually does, both in our DC office and in our offices around the world. So again, our focus is to really build export markets. And the way in which we do that really varies day by day, market by market, commodity by commodity. And so we approach each market and each commodity really differently depending on the situation in that particular country or region. But I think that one of the things that the council is best known for, and it kind of encompasses a lot of these various bubbles that you'll see on this slide, is building relationships between buyers and sellers. So, we have those staff and representatives on the ground around the world, and their main directive is to connect with people who are importing grain, the end users of feed grains, government officials in those particular regions, all so that we can make sure that the opportunity is available for exports of U.S. grain into those markets. So a lot of the programs that we implement are built upon building business-to-business relationships, opportunities for U.S. grain exporters and farmers to link directly with the people in the countries around the world who are buying those feed grains. We have a lot of programs that are focused on providing information. So you'll see on the bottom bubble there, information and research. We maybe, we'll host a large conference. In fact, we're hosting one, is it next week or the week after? I think the week after next, which is called the Virtual Grain Exchange. Normally it would be held in person, but this year it's a big virtual meeting. We're bringing in about 1,000 participants from around the world who are going to be learning about, grain production, supply, and demand in the United States. We talk about a lot of big picture issues, the impact of COVID-19 around the world, but also the impact of maybe African swine fever and things like that. But the real focus of that meeting is really building buyer-seller relationships. So in addition to kind of the general sessions, we provide opportunities for our exporter members to meet inside meetings with grain importers and hopefully give them the opportunity to make new connections or cement old friendships, I guess, and hopefully create that opportunity for sales of grain. But in addition to that, in a normal year, those same people who would come to the conference would be going out into the Midwest and meeting with farmers and meeting with U.S. agribusinesses. Probably, they would go to Nebraska and then they might spend a few days in New Orleans visiting the export facilities. They might spend some time meeting with seed tech companies to really understand the entire value chain and what makes the U.S. a reliable supplier of these feed grains or ethanol, whichever commodity we're talking about here. But this year, of course, they're not going to be able to have those trade team visits to the Midwest, but we are working with our state partners to provide a virtual experience for them to also have that kind of seeing is believing opportunity, getting to connect with farmers and with local agribusinesses. And again, trying to create those buyer-seller opportunities and also for them to get a real look at the quality and the reliability and supply of U.S. grain. So trade teams and missions are another way in which we implement programs. And not to drag this out too long, but I think that's one of the key areas where we've had our interns focus, whether they're in Washington or possibly even in one of our international offices, is working on helping with those programs. It takes a lot of work to bring those teams into the United States, to set up those meetings, to make sure they have a good experience while they're visiting the U.S. and make sure that we accomplish the goals that are set out for that team, which are usually to get specific information or meet specific potential suppliers or something like that. So our interns have been really engaged in working with our trade teams, possibly even working with international missions. When we talk about missions, we're really talking about when we send groups of our members, whether it be agribusiness members or farmers overseas for a particular purpose. And this relates to the bottom left bubble, technical education and contracting education. We provide customers around the world with a lot of information about the quality and supply of U.S. grain. Every year we produce various quality reports about U.S. corn, and those reports are then rolled out in our various international markets. And we use our farmer members to help roll those reports out and give their own perspective on what's happening in the U.S. That's really important for our customers around the world, particularly in some of our, I like to call them high touch markets, where those relationships are really at a premium. They like to know who's producing the corn that they're buying. And so bringing our farmer members into those markets and giving them a chance to meet directly with the customers or with their customers is a good opportunity, even though, ultimately the farmer isn't the one making the sale. The exporter members, the farmers are selling to one of those big grain trading companies, but the customers around the world really like to have that direct connection with our farmers. So sometimes our internship program has allowed our interns to also, work on those kinds of programs as well. So for the past, I guess maybe 6 or 7 years, we've had an intern in our DC office and also an intern in our international offices. And David will probably be able to give much more color to his experience as an intern. But I would say that what we try to do generally is pass around the opportunity around our office for who gets to have the extra hands during the summer. So sometimes we look at what the particular interests of that intern are in terms of, is it ag communication? Is it ag? Is it trade policy? And try to at least tailor their experience as much as we can toward providing them an internship that can help them long-term with their career or education interests. This year, as an example, unfortunately, we had to have a virtual internship program instead of someone in our DC office. But you know, her interest was really strongly in the policy side of what we do. So we tried to provide her some opportunities to engage on some of those issues. In our international offices, of course, it's a pretty different vibe. They're fully focused on you know, all the different aspects of a particular market. So far, with our international internships, we've had about half of them in Panama City, Panama, and half of them have gone to Mexico City. I think both have been very successful in terms of a good experience for the interns themselves, and we look forward to, you know, continuing that program. I think that the students who go who participate in our international internship program really get a good experience, you know, on language and culture, in addition to a good understanding of the market dynamics in that particular market, the opportunities that exist in terms of working on trade and international market development in another country. So I think, you know, if your focus kind of long-term in your career is to have an opportunity to live and work overseas at some point, it's a really good opportunity to try that out on a temporary basis and see how that looks. And our president and CEO, Ryan LeGrand, is a huge supporter of the international internship program. He himself got his start in international work by having an internship in Mexico, which led him to eventually spending 10 years of his career working and living in Mexico City prior to becoming our CEO. So we really are excited about this partnership that we have with Nebraska Corn, which allows students to go into one of our international markets and really get that kind of deep dive. So with that, I think I've talked long enough. I'll turn it over to David, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about what any of those internships look like.
Could I ask a question? So for the internship, what type of courses or like what type of experience would you want to see from your interns when they're like applying about like their interests?
Like for international or for the one in DC?
I guess both, but more, yeah, I guess both, but more, more in the DC one.
Sure, okay. Well, I would just say for the international one, it's really important. We've only had interns go to our Western Hemisphere markets so far. So one of the main things, of course, is Spanish language. I wouldn't say fluency, but proficiency is really important. Of course, most of our staff in those markets, they also, actually all of our staff and consultants speak both languages, but the customers don't necessarily speak English. So it's important to be able to have some level of proficiency in Spanish language and interest in engaging in kind of an intercultural experience to work in one of those offices. I think one, just quickly on the international side, one thing that I think is sometimes not appreciated is how difficult it can be to live in an international city without, you know, and the patience that it might take. And so we look for people who are prepared for that experience. In DC, I think, you know, our hope, of course, is that we get someone who is really interested in trade, of course, and the reasons why trade is so important to U.S. farmers and agribusinesses, and why, and passionate about learning about new cultures maybe, and working with people from a varied background like that. You know, living in DC is also can be an intimidating experience. So I think, you know, we're hopeful that the interns who get accepted into the program are ready to take on life in DC, which, you know, we've definitely had some of our interns enjoy it more than others. It's definitely a cultural shock for some. I'm actually born and raised in Montana and grew up in a town of 500 people. So I know for myself, my first internship was quite an awakening experience. But I've really enjoyed, of course, living in DC because I moved here full time. But I think on the education side, again, don't necessarily have to have an education in international business or something like that, or foreign affairs, but have an interest in that. My degree is actually in political science. And I think that's one thing that I would say that's probably why I keep mentioning it on this webinar, is that it's important to understand the council's role in DC, which is different than most people think of when they think about coming to DC. They think about going up to Capitol Hill and being engaged with lobbying or something like that. And we actually don't do that at all. We don't go up to Capitol Hill at all. That's actually our sister organization, National Corn Growers Association, who are co-located with us and also offer an internship opportunity. They do that kind of work, but we are solely focused on, again, building export markets. We do work with USDA, so there may be opportunities for that kind of professional networking opportunity, but it's not on the Hill for us. So if someone has that keen focus on having a legislative type career path, then probably that isn't the right internship. Although you can probably be interested in both. So I was, at least. So anyway, that's all I would say.
Awesome. And then for both programs, is living in the location that you are chartered for paid for, or that's on the intern's responsibility?
Yeah, so the way it works is that Nebraska Corn provides a stipend to the interns for the overall experience. And, I think that the stipend is intended to help offset the costs of living in DC, rather than necessarily as, payment. DC is an expensive place to live. So I think most of the interns have found it useful to find housing options that might be most affordable, with shared housing and those kinds of things. Again, I don't know what the future of that looks like post-COVID. DC is still on a pretty heavy lockdown. But yes, the success for staying within your housing allowance, I guess, or your stipend, is usually kind of teaming up with a group of interns who are also visiting DC for the summer.
And to add on to that a little bit too, sorry.
No,
so Nebraska Corn, typically for the DC and the out-of-state interns, we provide roughly a $6,000 stipend, and some of that I think gets deducted for administrative purposes and that kind of thing. Correct, Kim? I think something like that.
Yeah, with taxes. So
yeah.
taxes and things like that.
And so then with the international intern, I think we provide roughly $12,000 in terms of stipend for that individual, just because it's a little bit more expensive. We want to make sure that you're staying in a safe area of Mexico City or Panama City or wherever that may be. And I don't think, in terms of stipend, I think it's rare, especially in DC, to find a paid internship. I don't think that it was really designed to help make money or anything like that, but more to like offset living expenses and that kind of thing. We do also provide flights, a round trip flight to and from Washington, DC, or an international office. Sorry, David, you were going to say something?
No, I'll just add that on when I'm for my spiel at the end.
Yeah, David, why don't we turn to you then? And if you wanted to talk about your internship experiences, and then maybe more questions will be raised after you.
Cool. So I'm David Schuler. I'm from the Western Panhandle of Nebraska. And I actually grew up right outside Chimney Rock on the Oregon Trail. And I went to school in Baird. I know you're from Sydney, Miss Dolan. So I was like, oh, we got the Western Panhandle out here. But I went to the school, got my degree in animal science with a emphasis in the beef scholars. And now I'm back on my family's operation raising red Angus seed stock cattle, keeping us busy out here. But we also have about 1,000 acres of row crop for either sugar beets or corn or alfalfa and those types of deals, and feed our own feedstuffs in our feedlots. So I saw the full realm of what the U.S. Grains Council do from the corn side as well. And I'm going to break it up into two parts. I have the first part, which is the job at the U.S. Grains Council, and I'm going to speak on behalf of my experience, and then what I'm going to expect that it would be inside the U.S. Grains Council in D.C. So that area of what it became, would be really people go to DC for the policy side of things or for the being enrolled in that situation. And what was really cool is the U.S. Grains Council doesn't have a part on the Hill, as Kim would say, and it's fun to listen to Kim and really recollect on those times that we've had back in the day, and really almost brought a tear to my eye. But anyway, it's really cool to see the different programs work. So there's different offices inside there, so where an intern would be located. For me, it was the programs department, and there would be the global strategy department, membership and communication, and seeing those organizations work together. And for me, I helped work on trade teams, getting, as Kim said at the end of her presentation, getting the team ready to go somewhere. So for me, it was the Japanese ethanol media team to Nebraska, of all places, to look at ethanol production and how sustainable it's become, and how research at the university has made that a more efficient and sustainable option. And it was fun to take them to a local farm, then to an elevator, then to an ethanol plant or a couple ethanol plants, and share new ways that we're going about ethanol production in our state to make it more efficient, such as you know, creates a lot of heat in ethanol production, and they use that heat to dry off the distiller grains. And for the team, that was just, it blew them away that we've thought about all these different aspects with conjunction with the university to make that happen. And then 1 year later, we got to see ethanol being exported to Japan from the United States. So it's those boots on the ground work that they do that really, I got to see that firsthand of how that works out. And the other part of the internship is living in DC, and that is an experience all itself too. So you commit your time to the U.S. Grains Council, and then you commit your time to being in the realm of Washington, DC. And if you have a real love for, you know, the history of that town, what's going on, the bustle that Nebraskans, we do not have any source of that kind of, like, we work hard, but those fellows, I mean, it's a very young town. You're surrounded by other interns, other young professionals looking to take the next step. And it's fun to see that, and that experience itself grows you in a way that only the city of DC can allow you to have. The part about the housing I was going to say is that the stipend on that half, there's a lot of times for you to, like, really get to know your colleagues around in the DC area at luncheons or social networking events. And I never found another intern in that city that had it as good as we did with the Nebraska Corn Board stipend, as well as the U.S. Grains Council. Some people that, you know, on the Hill, it's unpaid and you're just focusing on the experience itself, which is great. You get that experience, and that itself is worth the investment that you make. But on top of that, the Nebraska Grains Council, or Nebraska Corn Board and the U.S. Grains Council, give you an opportunity to have $6,000 to go at your discretion of where you would like to live. And on that note, there's different ways to go about it. I'm a huge extrovert in nature, so I didn't care how many people I lived with. So I was with 14 people, and then another 4 in the basement in the Washington Internship Student Housing, which is WISH. And if anyone has any questions on that, I'll love to answer those. And I lived 2 blocks away from the Capitol. So I exchanged personal time and personal space for accessibility and a lot of great people. And I loved it. But I know there's people out there that would hate that. You know, it's way too many people. And I get that. Like, there's 2 fridges, but that ain't enough. But maybe if someone lived in a fraternity sorority in Nebraska would know that too, of like, I was just used to that sort of life. I had other friends who were more introverted in nature and had maybe friends or relatives in the area that stayed in a house out in, I don't call them the suburbs, but the outskirts of DC. And they took the metro into where their place of work for the U.S. Grains Council by Union Station, pretty much in the bustle of the area. And the metro system works great. I know there's other internships that are in big cities, and they don't really recommend you taking the metro system. It's not quite safe, but the DC one is very safe. It's very clean, and you can't find another one in a big city like that that is that accessible. And they just took that, and a lot of people take it for commuting in that city. So it works out really well, and you learn it after a week, just like, you know, learn the bus system at UNL or Kearney or those sorts of things. You learn it and you take it, and you would get, and that would be more of a little bit cheaper of an option, doing an Airbnb or finding apartments outside the skirts and then commuting in. but then you exchange the accessibility of being right in the thick of things for those sorts of things. So depends on what you really like. It's going to take a large chunk of that stipend, but that's not the point. I mean, no one else is going to have that ability that you will. And like I said, I would rival the experience that you get with the U.S. Grains Council. It's more than just stapling papers and sorting stacks, and it's more about that boots on the ground work of finding programs to help take the funding and understanding the funding of where it comes from and how they allocate it to the U.S. Grains Council, and then that investment going to make the reward of finding markets for our products that people in Nebraska make, like ethanol or corn or barley and those sorts of natures.
I wanted to take the chance to just also say that we've been trying to hire David to come back to DC for 3 years. So in terms of the value of internships, again, you know, like David, I'm kind of joking with him, but not really. You know, I think there is great value in the opportunity that Nebraska Corn provides for the students who take these internships, because there's a great networking opportunity to meet not only with staff from Grains Council, but lots of different organizations and companies. And I do really think that the living experience on the Hill also provides a good networking opportunity for those who are working on the Hill, but also it's a good social group. You know, in the DC office, we have a small team, and we only have like the 2 interns, one at the corn growers and one at our office. So it's great when the interns live in the group housing, provide them another option for students who are in town for the summer. So I just think that for myself, I did an internship when I was in college, one on Capitol Hill and one with a lobbying group. So one totally unpaid and one paid a much smaller stipend than what Nebraska Corn provides. But both of them proved to be kind of life-changing experiences for me in terms of the opportunity to test out DC, I guess, as a place I always thought I wanted to live, but definitely wanted to test it out. And 2, just getting to test out different kinds of career opportunities that existed in agriculture. You know, I grew up on a farm, but I knew I didn't want to farm as my career, but I wanted to be involved in agriculture. So, you know, I worked both on ag issues on the Hill and then for the wheat growers in a lobbying capacity. And so really getting to test that out. So I would really encourage you to take the opportunity while you're in college to apply for and participate in as many internships as you can to really have that experience to broaden your horizons before you choose a more permanent career.
Very good. Any further questions from any of our participants? If you think of any along the way, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Yep, go ahead.
I was gonna add, so, and I know this is common for a lot of Hill internships. So while you guys were there, your families basically paid for your food, living expenses, and things like that.
If you're on the Hill?
Yeah.
If you're on the Hill and you're in an unpaid internship, yeah, you have to expect that your family is going to pay the bill. So that's why, like David said, you know, the money that Nebraska Corn pays really does help offset the cost of the housing and the living expense. And so it's a really good opportunity for an internship in DC because many of them are totally unpaid, and it does require strong financial backing from your family.
Yeah, are you guys taking junior? Are you guys taking juniors and seniors, or also freshmen and sophomore?
We've typically taken juniors and seniors-ish, just because they have a little bit more experience and they've got a few more courses under their belt, maybe a little bit more ready for an experience like this. That doesn't mean that if you're a freshman or sophomore, you shouldn't apply now because maybe you've got some great skills or something under your belt that we would be interested in. But yeah, typically in the past, it's usually juniors and seniors, that range. And as Kim mentioned earlier, we've taken a diverse array of different students. As David mentioned, you said animal science, right? We've had other students that have been integrated science. We had one student that was agricultural communications. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones that we had, but yeah, Grains Council have done a tremendous job in working with those students to find really good fits for them within their everyday scope of what they're doing. So it's a beneficial opportunity for the student, as well as it helps out Guidance Council staff too. So you don't need to be, I guess, like narrowed in on a specific major program, but yeah, we're open to all kinds.
Yeah, even though I still work predominantly on the seed stock farm with my family and with the cattle every day, every time I go to a Nebraska Cattlemen meeting or go to Nebraska Farm Bureau convention, my experience of being enthralled in the U.S. Grains Council, bringing that back to my operation, I think about that all the time. And we talk about foreign agricultural service, of where that money is allocated to, and now knowing that where that money goes via the U.S. Grains Council is really cool to understand that, and maybe not a lot of people my generation will understand all that money. On that note, having a sheet of acronyms, a cheat sheet, was probably the first thing I ever did. So if you ever have any job in government, get a cheat sheet for the acronyms, because it'll go a long way for you.
Yeah.
But I had a great time. I mean, it was really, I wouldn't get too bogged down by the expense side of things, as we've already made the point before, like this is the best deal you're going to get. And the investment for your future starts now. And the fruit of the labor that you put in and the hard work from that is incredible to have in your back pocket when you come back to Nebraska from either the international internship or the DC internship. You'll have those connections. I still talk to numerous people that I met in DC, my age or industrial professionals, and I used them all the way through my senior year, and I still use them today on different leadership programs that I'm looking forward to being a part of back home. And yeah, I still think about coming back, Kim. I don't think Dad's
have a
gonna
job
really
opening right now, David.
I was gonna say,
I know it. I know.
I didn't know Lucas was leaving.
Yeah,
Oh,
he went to FAS actually. So now I'll spread the word that David wants to come back around my office.
Well, and that's a comment I constantly hear that from Kim too, is, we'd really like to, I think the last 3 or 4 interns that we've had, Kim has said she's wanted to hire. So it just, I think, speaks to the caliber of students.
Mm-hmm.
I also tried to slash her tires before she left.
Yeah. Just goes to show how well you train us.
To stay. I've tried to convince the last couple that finishing college wasn't that important, but I would have to be the one to call their parents. So I haven't done that. College is important, don't get me wrong. But think of all these remote learning opportunities.
Any other questions about the internship, or are we ready to wrap up for the day? I don't hear anything, but if you think of anything along the way, don't hesitate to reach out to me. You know my contact info, and then I can pass that along to either David or to Kim. I want to thank David and Kim for both being with us today. It's good to see you both virtually. I haven't seen either of you in a really long time. So even though this is remote, it's good to see both of you, and thanks for your time.